Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
We're learning Mishnayos Nedarim, Perek Beis, Chapter 2. We're in the middle of Mishnah Dalid, and we're going to just go back a little bit on a part that we did yesterday because we need that in order to be able to get the rest of the Mishnah. So we're going to start from where it says, Harei alai katruma. If a person says that this loaf of bread should be upon me like truma. So im katrumas halishka nadar, if his intention was when he made the neder, like the trumas halishka, the separation of the chamber, referring to the half shekels that people would sanctify and give it to the Beis Hamikdash for the communal sacrifices. Those coins would be put in a special chamber in the Beis Hamikdash, and a couple of times throughout the year, they would take the money from there to buy the communal sacrifices. So those monies were called the Trumas Halishka, the separation of the chamber. Now, if that is what your intention was, you want this loaf of bread to be like that, like the Trumas Halishka, if that was your intention, also it's going to be forbidden, because those monies become forbidden through a person's declaration that they should be sanctified. And therefore, if you link what you're trying to forbid through your declaration to that, that is an effective neder, and the bread will be usher. Vimishal Gairin Mutter. But if its intention was that should be like the truma that we separate from the grain, that's what he meant the loaf should be like, then it's permissible, then it's going to be mutter. Because we said yesterday that even though he's linking it to something that is forbidden, but it's something that, as we said before, the grain before the truma is separated is tevel. Everything is forbidden. It is true that you have to designate the grain that will be truma is designated by you. However, it doesn't change its status. It was forbidden to other people, and it's still forbidden to other people. Like truma becomes permissible to the Kohen, but in regard to other people, in regard to people other than Kohanim, which is yourself, and you're trying to go ahead and make it forbidden to you, like truma, you're not taking something that was permissible to you and you're not linking it to something that was ever permissible to you, and then you make forbidden through your designation. And therefore, linking it to truma of the grain is not an effective neder, and the loaf of bread is is permissible. The imistam, and if let's say it was unclear what you meant, as we've been saying, the person says, I don't remember what I meant, what I had in mind when I did it. Usher, then we say it's forbidden following the rule that the Mishnah began with, stam nedarim lahachmir. If you have an unclear vow, then we're stringent. We assume that the person meant to make it in an effective way because he's trying to make things forbidden here. And therefore we assume that he have a choice of making it in the effective or the ineffective way. We assume he did it in the effective way, and therefore we will declare this loaf of bread forbidden. Divrei Rebbe Meir, these are the words of Rebbe Meir. So the whole Mishnah that basically now was dealing with examples of things that can be interpreted in two different ways. If you meant one way, it could be forbidden. If you meant another way, it could be permissible. And if it's unclear what you meant, we say that it is forbidden. These are the words of Rebbe Meir. Rebbe Yehuda Oimer, Rebbe Yehuda says, Stam Truma B'Yehuda Asura. Rebbe Yehuda says, if you are in Judea, and you said that the bread should be like Truma, and it's unclear which Truma you meant, if this takes place in Yehuda, in the section of Eretz Yisrael called Judea, Asura, then that food will be forbidden. Again, we assume that if there's two ways to interpret, and we don't know which way you interpret it, your intention was, we go lahachmer. We say that your intention was to do it in the effective way, and therefore it's forbidden. However, the Galil muteris. In the Galil, in the northern section, the section of Eretz Yisrael in the north called the Galil, then stam truma, then an unclear neder about truma will be muteris, will be permissible. Why? Shein anshe Galil makirin as truma salishka. Because the other choice of what truma would have meant, that it should be usher, is truma salishka, the separation from the chamber of the money. And that the people of the Galil do not think about Trumas Halishka when they say the word Truma. The people in the Galil are far away from the Beis Hamikdash. They are. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says that if a person from the Galil says Truma, the option of Trumas Halishka, that he meant Trumas Halishka, we assume he didn't mean that because they don't think about that. That's not what's in their mind when they say truma. If you live in Yehuda, in Judea, where the Beis Hamikdash is, then when you use the word truma, you could be referring to the truma salishka. But if you're in the Galil and you're far away from the Beis Hamikdash, you're not thinking about things about the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore the assumption is that when you said truma, that you mean the truma of grain, unless you otherwise specify, unless you otherwise clarify. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda argues in Reb Meir. Reb Meir said, stam truma anywhere is going to be, lahachmer is going to be stringent. We're going to assume that he meant to link it to something that would be effective in making a neder, something that is forbidden through your declaration, something that becomes forbidden through your declaration. And no matter where you are, according to Reb Meir, we say that you could have meant either one of the two things, and therefore, when it's not clear, we say that we go lahachmer. We say that you did mean to make it effective, to link it to something effective that would make it a neder. And Yehuda says, no, it depends where you are. If you're in Yehuda, I agree with Reb Meir. But if you're in the Galil, where there are people, where people don't think about the Beis HaMikdash and don't think about the Truma Salishka when they say Truma, therefore the assumption is when they said Truma that they mean the Truma of the grain, and therefore the bread will be permissible. So it's not like Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the principle that stam nedarim lahachmer, that when you have an unclear neder, you should be stringent. But that's only going to be when you really have two choices. In the Galil, you don't really have two choices of what truma means, of what people mean when they say truma. People mean only one thing, and therefore that is the assumption you have to make when it's unclear. Okay, so Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda are not arguing on the principle as to whether when you have an unclear vow we should be stringent. They're just here arguing about in the Galil, where because the whole principle of being stringent in an unclear vow is because people might have meant one of two possible. There's two possible things that they may be thinking. Says Rabbi Yehuda in the Galil, there's only one way. The assumption is only one way, and that is truma of the grain. Because the truma of the lishka, the Beis Hamikdash, when they live far away, they're not thinking about that when they say the word truma. Okay, now let's go to the next part of the Mishnah. The next part of the Mishnah reads like this. Stam charamim b'Yehuda mutarin. Remember we spoke about chayrim, right? If a person says this bread should be like chayrim, and in this context, chayrim does not mean excommunication. Chayrim is a form of a neder, a form of a way of dedicating something. It can either be a chayrim to the Beis Hamikdash and it becomes a property of the Beis Hamikdash, or it could be the chayrim that goes to the Kohanim. That eventually, once it gets to the Kohanim, it's permissible to anybody. So we said before, so when you have the word charamim, you seemingly have you have two options of what it means. However, this Mishnah says stam charamim b'Yehuda mutarin. A stam chayrim in Judea is mutter. An unclear, if a person says this loaf of bread should be like chayrim, and it's unclear what he meant, says the Mishnah, what's going to be the halacha? What's going to be the status of this bread? Mutter. It's going to be permissible. Now that should be problematic, because if we say that if we follow the principle that stam nedarim or lahachmer, that unclear nedarim you should be stringent. So what happened here? You should be stringent and say that when the person said this loaf of bread is chayrim, and it's unclear what he meant, we should say that he meant a chayrim to the Beis Hamikdash, a chayrim to Hashem. So why are we saying mutarim? It's permissible. And if you read further in the Mishnah, it reads about Galil Asurin. But in the Galil, if you say chayrim and it's unclear, then the food is forbidden. Why? Shen anshe Galil makir and eschar kohanim. Because the people of the Galil do not think about the chayrim that goes to the kohanim. So we'll explain that soon. But from the fact that the Mishnah explains in the Galil it's forbidden, because we assume that people don't mean chayrim to the Kohanim, they mean chayrim to Hashem, because they don't think about chayrim to the Kohanim. Okay, so that's the explanation in Galil why it's forbidden. But what's the explanation in Yehuda why it's forbidden? That it's permissible, I'm sorry. Why in Yehuda is it permissible? Why don't we say that we have two ways to explain chayrim, and we should go lahak, we should be stringent, as we said before? The answer is that this part of the Mishnah is a brand new opinion. It is not a continuation of Rabbi Yehuda, who we just read. It's a brand new Tana. His name is Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok. That's what they bring down here in the notes from the Gemara. His name is not mentioned in the Mishnah, but it was Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok. His opinion was that he disagreed on the whole principle of the Mishnah. The whole principle of the starting point of the Mishnah, which is that an unclear neder, you're stringent. He says, no, you are not stringent by an unclear neder. But an unclear neder, you're not stringent. If you don't know what he meant, then you go lahaka, then you go to your lenient, and we say that the food is going to be permissible. And therefore, since that's the principle that he holds, he therefore says that an unclear chayrim vow, when you link something to chayrim and it's not clear what you meant by chayrim, if you're in Yehuda, it's mutter. When you have two choices, could he have meant a chayrim to the Beis Hamikdash, which would have made the loaf forbidden, or he can mean a chayrim to the Kohanim, which becomes permitted once it gets to the Kohanim. And if that's what he meant to connect it to, there is no vow. We say there's no vow. That's when you have a choice. But in Galil, we say it's usher. Why? Because again, there's no choice in Galil. In Galil, when you say chayrim, since the people of the Galil don't live amongst the Kohanim, the way they explain it is that the Kohanim lived in Yehuda, in Judea, where the Beis Hamikdash was. They lived in the area of the Beis Hamikdash, not in the Galil. And therefore, the people of the Galil were not thinking about Kohanim when they said chayrim. The only thing they would think when saying chayrim is to the Beis Hamikdash. Oh, if that's what if we can assume that that's what they mean, because that's all they think about, then okay, then it's going to be forbidden. Because they don't mean, when they say chayrim, they don't mean the chayrim that goes to the Kohanim, they mean the chayrim that goes to the Beis Hamikdash. But according to this part of the Mishnah, the principle mentioned before that we go lahachmer by non-clear neder, he doesn't hold that way. He also, when you have a choice of which way to go, to be stringent, meaning to say it's forbidden, or to interpret what he's saying to be lenient, and that it's permissible, that's what you're going to do. It's just that in a place where there is no other option of being permissible, like in the Galil by chayrim, therefore the halacha is going to be, because they only think about the Beis Hamikdash say chayrim, it's going to be forbidden. But the point here in this Mishnah is, at this point in the Mishnah is, we have a whole new opinion here, and the argument of this point of the Mishnah doesn't only apply to Charamim. It applies to what we said before about Truma too. In Truma, let's say you have Truma in Yehuda. Truma in Yehuda, we said, the Mishnah said before, according to Yehuda, Stam Truma b'Yehuda Asura. Unclear, if you say this should be like Truma, it's unclear which Truma you meant, in Yehuda it's going to be forbidden. According to the end of the Mishnah, it's going to be permissible. Because when you have a choice of what it means, you're going to be lenient and say that he meant to link it to what we say that he linked it to what was permissible. And therefore, it's not so much that by Charamim he disagrees and by Truma he agrees. It's across the board. Stam, Nedarim, according to this opinion, are lahakal, are lenient. Unless you don't have two options, if you know there's only one option, then what people think, like in the case of Galil and Chayrim, then it's going to be forbidden. When it's unclear, because there's nothing to be unclear about. We know what they mean. But in cases where it's not clear, there are two options. According to this opinion in the Mishnah, the halacha is that you would be lenient, and the Tanura says at the end, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Halacha follows like Rabbi Yehuda, which means that general we say a unclear neder is stringent, but in the case of Truma, in the Galil, where they don't think about the Truma Salishka, there an unclear vow of Truma is going to be permissible, because the assumption is they meant to link it to the Truma of the grain, which would be an ineffective vow. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.